Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of the Lookout Podcast. I'm joined with the legendary Bill Moody. Thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Man, I actually got a list of things I was going to cover, so I want to kind of coming in with the intro of it because are you the second base manager of all time or just second base manager of NCSB?
Second at NCSB after Francis Lufkin.
Oh man, yeah, and kind of the godfather of smoke jumping, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the one who led all the experimental jumps too before smoke jumping was a program.
Well, yeah, he was there during the experimentals. He was actually a fire guard, and they hired him to climb trees to retrieve chutes, and then give fire information because he was a fire guard. And then he made the one jump during that era, and then he was a part of the crew the next year, and eventually the base manager for NCSB.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. What year was that when he became? Was that 39 then?
That was 39 during the experimentals. Yeah,
gotcha.
October, November 39. They made 58 jumps and during that period of time, and kind of established the program.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, and then so the other things I was gonna talk to you about, because man, you've been around the fire for quite a bit. So I mean, there was like an era where we were doing some trading with the Russians, and then I heard you had to save NCSB a few times. And then Francis Lufkin actually had to save the loft. Well, what part of it, right? The sewing machines and stuff?
Well, yeah, that came after Francis had left, but there's a national Smokejumper base study, and they determined that we should be kind of a satellite base under Redmond. And anyway, through all that and the political interactions between the forest and the region and the Washington office, they took our sewing machines away. But we actually made a deal with the Winthrop Rangers district, and I think we sent 4 machines up there for some work, kind of joint work with them.
Oh, yeah.
So we retained those. Not really with the blessing of the region, but we did enough to survive, and eventually got them all back.
Yeah. Oh, really? So they took them all to Redmond on you, and then
no, they took majority of the machines to Redmond. We kept 4 here, the primary machines that we needed for doing some work, as well as servicing the forest for any sewing projects that they had. And but they did take all the parachutes were for a period of time had to be repacked by Redmond. We couldn't even repack parachutes here.
Oh, weird.
And eventually we got that back, and then finally in 1984 we got reestablished with 21 jumpers.
Oh, wow. Dang. Did that I heard it happened twice, or was it just a one-time deal that happened where they tried to bring NCSB into Redmond?
Well, it's kind of a continuing from 1981 to 84.
Oh.
And seasonal. We'd have to. We were working under the region and under them, and they even went so far as to station a spike crew in Wenatchee, which is 20 minutes flight time away.
Really?
And we're staffing fires with Redmond jumpers stationed out of Wenatchee.
Oh.
And so it was a very political period of unrest, and luckily we had a forest supervisor who was an ex-jumper out of Missoula.
Great.
And he was very proactive, very supportive, and between he and his connections with some of the congressional people, both senators and some representatives, we were able to get things turned around and reinstated in 84.
Oh, really? Oh, man, that's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. Was that also like when Cave Junction and LeGrand went away? It was around the same time?
About the same time, as a result of the same study. And they went out, and I think in 82, I think was the last year for Cave Junction, as I recall. And I think LeGrand, which was one of our satellite bases at the time.
Oh, yeah.
They got LeGrand was originally a spike base and a satellite base of ours, and then in the early 70s they became their own base, but they were subject to that same study. And then in 82 they were closed.
Dang. Did you ever make it down there then?
Oh yeah, got my first fire jump out of LeGrand
Really?
in '57, and then I ran it. We had kind of a we'd usually open up by the 1st of July through September, and I ran the base in '64, '65, and spent a lot of other time down there reinforcing.
Oh, that is great. Was it a nice spot to be?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, yeah, it was a nice location, Northeast Oregon. You had the Blue Mountains, and you had the Greenhorns, and you had the
Oh yeah.
Wallowa Whitman Wilderness, and then we did a lot of jumping over along Hell's Canyon, which was a very challenging environment to both jump and to fight fire due to the usually pretty high winds and very high temperatures. But
Oh yeah.
it was a great place to be based.
Yeah, I bet. Oh man, it reminds me of a story when I was I think it was in 2015 or something like that. I think it was in Alaska, and then I came back to Missoula, and it was like Missoula's 75th. It was 2015. I don't know what year it was, but anyways, I was gone, and I'm pretty sure it was in Alaska. And I came back, and the anniversary was going on for the Missoula Smokejumper base.
Mm.
And one of the old boys was talking to me, and he's like, oh man, have you got a jump over the Black Range yet? You know, our Silver City, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, I haven't. He's like, well, you're not a real smoke jumper until you crack silk over the Black Range. And I was like, oh man, and as a rookie, you never feel, you're not really a smoke jumper until you fire jump, and then like you don't feel like you're a proper smoke jumper until you get jump out of your own base. Like there's all these things. Right. So then here I am in my third year, and then I got this other guy who's got a ton more experience than I do, being like, well, until you get that Black Range jump, you're not really a smoke jumper. And I was like, oh,
well, there's some other places like the North Cascades and so on, but
yeah.
when you're in Northeast Oregon, out of LeGrand, the Eagle Cap Wilderness was part of the Wallowa Forest. Well, that was some parts of the Eagle Cap are similar to the North Cascades, but great country.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and the Wallowa
Whitman.
Wallowa Whitman. I've heard that's just great. I want to say I've been there, but I can't put my finger on it. But I heard that's beautiful country too.
Mm-hmm. You could also access a lot of that. They would jump out of either Redmond or McCall.
Oh,
okay, McCall is just on the east side of the Hells Canyon, and so they'd come over and boost. Or set up a spike at LeGrand after LeGrand was closed, and so they did a lot of jumping in the Blues and Wallowa Whitman, and as did Redmond.
Oh yeah. Oh, that actually reminds me. I'm glad you brought that up, Bill, because everyone's got their competition on who was the actual original. Like Missoula's like, well, we got the first fire jump, so we're actually the first base. And they always tease us about being the birthplace of practice jumping. And then I was talking to one of my friends who jumps out of McCall, and he's like, well, actually, the original tests were out of Ogden, and that's one of our spike bases. So McCall's the first base. So it's kind of funny. Everyone's got their story. Right. Did you ever hear about that? Any tests coming out of Ogden?
Yeah. There were a couple of jumps made by I think he's just a professional jumper, but he made a couple exhibition jumps for the Forest Service for Region 4 in 1934, 35, 34, I think it was. And that's out of that, the Region 4 Forest Service thought that it was a totally too dangerous, and pretty much advocated not to enter into such a program with firefighters as parachutists. And so then that went from 1934, 35 up until 39 when we got into a bona fide actual experimental project out of here.
Oh wow, man, that's amazing how much went through. Was that letter? Isn't there a post around here somewhere? There's a letter about it being like only a crazy person would do a job like this, and and it goes in more detail, and it's more funny, and it's more descriptive, and I think it's great. It made me proud to be a smoke jumper after when I made it through rookie training, and then reading the letter, I was like, yeah, I'm one of those guys he's talking about.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was an interesting letter.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was kind of, I don't know, rash a little bit. I don't know the right word for it, but it was, it was pretty. I don't know, bold. I guess he was, saying it wasn't a possibility and not a viable option when it's. There's even like that cartoon, Planes Fire and Rescue. My kiddo watches it a lot now, and one of the lines is the gal plane is like, yeah, we fight. We put out lots of fires. the only ones you hear about are the big ones on the news, and that's kind of like the smoke jumper world.
Right.
Like a lot of fires getting put out, and you don't hear about them because they get put out and kept small before they get to go big.
Yep.
But and then what I was kind of referring to earlier with Lufkin saving those sewing machines, I heard that the base was closer to the river, and then at one point there was a big flood and was sweeping away the original loft, and he was racing to save a bunch of sewing machines. Is that true?
That's true.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that they were finally after the experimentals. Then we operated out here kind of as an on-fire basis, as opposed to being a structured base. And in '45, they, with the success of the program, they established a permanent program here. And then by '48, they had the facilities on the west side of the airport here, right along the river.
Oh.
And they were just about to complete the parachute loft, and at the same time of the 1948 flood, which is actually a nationally famous destructive flood that came down the Meadow. And as they were just doing the final work on the loft, the river was undermining the facility, eroding the bank.
Oh.
And so they just got the I think the packing tables out just shortly before the river eroded to the point where the facility fell into the river.
Oh, geez.
And so with that, then they reestablished the base later that year, but actually 1949, onto the current location on the east side of the airport.
Oh, gotcha. Wait, what year was that you said?
1949.
1949. Oh, so just 10 years later then. Hey. Mm-hmm. So that loft right there is around 49.
Yeah, that came in around 49, yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason why I was making this trip, and I guess I forgot to announce when we first started, is we're on location at North Cascade Smokejumper Base, the original jump base, depending on who you talk to, I guess, but, in my opinion, and mostly biased because I'm a rookie from here. And I'm, of course, talking to Bill Moody, but at NCSB here, short for North Cascade Smokejumper Base.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard, back to the Francis Lufkin thing, I heard rumor that as it was starting to go, he lit it on fire so it wouldn't cause more problems downriver. Is that part true? Or?
I haven't heard that one.
Oh, all right.
No,
maybe that one's... Yeah, one's a stretch.
If you can verify that fact, well, let me know.
I don't know how you do it, but yeah, I thought it was interesting. I was like, geez, that's a smart move. That's true, because he didn't want to cause more debris getting swept downriver. But with a flood like that, I mean, there's probably full houses and stuff getting sent downstream, I imagine.
Yeah, it was very, very destructive and wiped out all the bridges up at Winthrop and down at Twisp and on down the valley all the way to the Columbia. So it was just a major destructive flood, and took a long time to recover from it.
Yeah, I bet. And what year did you get here in the valley then, Bill?
57.
Was there any signs of it when you moved in? I mean,
you could just see old footings along as you drive up the valley from Pateros to Twisp. You can see remnants of old bridges and footings for those bridges and so on. And
oh yeah. Yeah, because I was after rookie training, and the mile and a half is right here on the dirt road, so it was on the side of the airstrip where the original loft was there, and so I remember a few PT runs. I was kind of running around, kind of trying to imagine where it might be, but I mean the ground's probably totally gone where it was, huh?
Yeah, where it was. There, if you look very, very closely, you can probably see from footing for some of the other buildings that were there, but. As a result of the flood, and wiped out a lot of the roads, the Forest Service roads, so they increased the number of jumpers here by, I can't remember how many, 15 or something like that, and with the idea that the forced access, because they couldn't access by vehicles, so they'd have to rely more on jumpers to jump in and secure. And also, I think that was the first year that we had a helicopter used to retrieve jumpers because they didn't have the road access for vehicles. So they, 1940, they claimed in '48 this was the first time they used helicopters, at least in this region, as far as retrieving jumpers from fires.
Wow. Yeah. That'd be a great feeling, like not having to back out. Yeah, I remember, like when I rookie, there was kind of a thing of pride not to get a helicopter ride if you could do it, like you try to be low maintenance, so like not have to call up a helicopter because it costs more, and then you're taking the helicopter time of that helicopter where it could be maybe doing something else. So you try to pack out as much as we could, which kind
Right.
of part of the NCSB base, I guess, and probably most smoke jumper bases, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And then you rookied in what year did you rookie then? 57 then?
57.
57. Oh, gotcha.
Mhm.
Is that what brought you to the Valley then? Smoke jumping?
Yep.
Oh,
Mhm.
great. How'd you hear about it? How'd you know about it?
Well, I heard about smoke jumping the year before because I was, when I was still in high school, I worked at a Chippewa sawmill down in Central Oregon, actually just at, where is it, down at Crescent, which is south of Bend.
Oh.
And ended up getting on a Forest Service fire crew, and then they had a lightning storm go through, and they brought in a couple Cave Junction jumpers to jump to fire close to where we were working, and so that kind of instilled the idea. And then a friend of mine was working up on the Mount Baker Snoqualmie Forest that same year, and met a bunch of jumpers from this base. So while we were in high school, uh, he said, are you interested in smoke jumping? If so, let's go over to Winthrop, which was kind of, it's inner city, but they called it Winthrop, and see if we can apply for smoke jumping for 1957 when we graduate from high school.
Yeah.
So we did, and put in an application, but it was kind of that early introduction to seeing smoke jumpers in action the year before, 1956, that kind of attracted us to it.
Man, very young. Now it's most folks I think are mid 20s. It seems like, if not older. I was 27 when I started.
Yeah, I was actually 17. That first year I worked for the Forest Service, I was only 17.
Really?
My application said 18, but
Yeah.
so I started jumping 2 weeks after I turned 18. And
oh wow. What were the parachutes like back then? Was it I'm trying to think of how to word it. It's what is it? Canopy? No. All the lines display now. Well, the round's dead, I guess now. But when when we were jumping rounds, when I was on the round, all of your lines and everything would splay out first, and then the canopy would inflate, and so you didn't get the opening shock. Was yours the opposite of that?
Yeah. They were just the canopy. The canopy itself was just accordion folded on top of the lines, and then you just put a bungee or a flex cover over, and so they would, and then you tethered the apex of the canopy to the inside of the static line, and so a static line jump, and it just pull a cover off, and then it would expose the chute, then the lines. So you got some pretty hard openings if you weren't in really, really good position. And then, of course, when we went to the D-bag, it eliminated all of that, and you get very, very mild openings generally from that.
Yeah, because it just takes all those lines out first, right?
Right. And so the canopy was FS2, which is a 28-foot.
Yeah.
Some of them are still all white, and some of them are candy colored. And in 1954, they introduced the FS5, which was a 32-foot circular with 6-foot slots. Later, they put 10-foot slots and called it a FS5A. So we had some FS5As for the heavyweights on the crew, and then eventually they eliminated. At this base in 1965, all of the FS2s were replaced by FS5As.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they're all silk then too, right?
They were no, the silks were just the first couple of years when the Eagle parachute, and by the early 40s we were going to nylons. A lot of those early canopies in the FS1 and even the FS2, but the FS1s, the 28-foot circular. They put the slots. I can't remember if there's 6 or 7 originally, but the parachutes at that time were basically military rejects.
Oh, really?
Because World War II had started, and of course we committed in 1941, and then the military adopted an airborne program, so all of the chutes were nylon. They kind of cut off the silk supply because of the Japanese controlled pretty much the silk in Southeast Asia. And so they went to nylon, and then, of course, the priority was for military. And so some of the rejects and so on went to the Forest Service, which they kind of tidied up what rejected the chute or took care of any issues there. And they also had the 7-foot 6, and then later 7-foot slots, and then they had lines attached to the canopy that directed, opened or closed the slots. So,
Oh, gotcha, for like steering.
yeah, then they were kind of a loose line that you had to search out the line and grab it. And then later on in early 70s, one of our law foremen here made that control line into a toggle. So we went to a toggle right off the forward part of the risers, and then you could open or close, and
Oh, wow.
make your turns
Yeah.
with using a toggle.
Dang, that was in the 70s, huh?
Hmm.
Man, because even when I was rooking, or when I rookied, I remember running into some folks, and they still thought we were like the military rounds where they don't have steering. And I was like, no, we can steer them just fine. It's just slow, but we can go wherever we want, really, depending on how much airspace we have.
Right, yeah. That evolved from the 5A to the FS-10, which is the military TU seal cut, and then later to the FS-12, which is pretty close to the canopy that I jumped in the Soviet Union when I went there in '76, and then from there, probably when you started, they were probably in the FS-14.
That's what it was,
Yeah,
yeah.
they had three different sizes,
Yeah.
depending upon weight.
Yeah. I think the blue rises were the lightweight folks.
Mm-hmm.
The green, was it the green were the medium weight folks? And then the gold, I think, were heavyweights?
They came out. That was a year or two after I retired, so
Oh.
I wasn't familiar. I just knew they had three different canopies, different sizes.
Yeah, for me, I lost so much weight during rookie training. They weighed us at the end of the week, and it was really hot that year,
Mm-hmm.
and so wasn't really eating, and we were burning so many calories. And one of the fellows who was a PJ here told us to go out and just eat some junk, like go eat some pizza, get some just calories in your bodies, because all of us were losing a ton of weight.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in the medium, and then afterwards, I was slowing down, able to eat, and not working out so hard, and put I think it was like 20 pounds back on that I'd lost, and so I moved to the large. I want to say it was gold risers. Man, I hope I got that right. But now it doesn't even matter, because they're all one size, I think, again.
Yeah, I think all the Ram Airs I think are the same size.
Yeah, I got to fly the DC. I think it was a DC-7 is what the one I got to fly was, and then they have there's like a 360, like CR 360. I think they're jumping now too, and
Yeah, I kind of lost track. I know
Yeah.
in '85 they sent all the base managers. We went up to Fairbanks and went through the Ram Air training, and
Oh, really?
we were jumping the Goliath, which is one of the larger Ram Airs, and
Oh, wow.
we went back the next year and did some timber jumping with it, and then I think we evolved into I can't remember the name of the last one I jumped in '89,
Yeah.
and then they've evolved far beyond that.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive to see, and especially in the sport world, it made sense to me, like, that we'd go as an agency to the Ram Air system, because I heard that Dale Longenecker, who was here for a long time, was trying to improve the round, and really it sounded like it was just kind of maxed out in technology wise, like it was going to be as good as it's going to be, really, to most without maybe some minor things where the Ram Air system was just leaps and bounds and changing so much, like you said, from the Goliath to like the DC-7 to the CR360, and then having the ability, if you can fly it right, to stall it out and make it kind of fly like a round, if you're pretty good with it, is pretty handy. So to have that forward speed, but also be able to get it to stall out and go kind of like an elevator ride. But problem is, you ride it too long, you can really hurt yourself.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on it then? Did you like the Ram Air? Were you thinking we should stay with the round, or?
Well, I thought the Ram Air has its place, particularly Alaska, places in the Great Basin
Yeah.
that have greater winds. But I guess I think I only had 20 jumps on the Ram Air system. But if you're looking at program safety, I think the round is the chute of choice. When you look now in the Ram Air program, for between the BLM and Forest Service, there have been 4 fatalities. There have been some extremely serious accidents,
Yeah.
and really since we put netting on the round parachute, I don't believe there have been any serious malfunctions.
Oh.
We haven't had fatalities. I just think going with a static line system, which you jump from roughly 1,500 feet as opposed to the Ram Air at 3,000. And it seems it's kind of a no-brainer from the time you hook up until you exit. You're concentrating on the wind drift when the spotter throws the streamers, the jump spot, the wind. You can concentrate on that as opposed to going through all of the ram air procedures. And I think, from what I can gather, there's a lot of intelligence is lost just with the concentrating on the procedure as opposed to maybe the fire and that environment that you're operating in.
Yeah.
And the other concern I have, of course, is that the DZ, the jump spot, drop zone, has to be or is much larger for the ram air as opposed to the round.
Yeah.
And I think we probably are going to lose a lot of the jump country or a lot of the jump in the West Coast where we have a lot of heavy timber and
Tall timber too.
yeah, tall timber and smaller spots, and that's been the indication that I have so far.
Yeah, and I get that too, because and probably since you're the base manager forever, you follow all that stuff, and I didn't know anything about it until I rookied, but all the fatalities and what causes them, and it's like, man, like you said, the failures and the malfunctions, and the argument, I guess, is kind of that the reserve is really good, so you can just fly to the ground. But then someone brought up the point is, if something happens to you and somehow you're unconscious, you're still gonna hit the ground pretty safe on a round, But if you're unconscious and something happens in malfunction, with a rammer, which happens more than a round, it could be the end of you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do have that couple of safety devices that will open automatically.
That's true, the cutter.
And apparently that's happened a few times, from what I understand.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It's like what the heck is the name of that thing? Yeah, it's that little cutter system that'll cut your little spring-loaded reserve to throw it out for you. Mm-hmm. It's like AED or something really similar, like AED.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't.
So anyway, maybe I'm an old timer, and but to me, I think the round system is far safer in the long run, and if the agency's philosophy is to have the highest level of safety in the program, I think the round is the way to go.
Yeah, and like you said, less jumps. It became 15. It used to be like 10, 7 or 10, I think.
So we started rookies with 7, and then a refresher with 2, and then if we didn't jump every 2 to 3 weeks, we'd get another refresher. But it certainly, I thought we were very successful and had a very good program with just the 7 jumps, and there's nothing wrong with boosting it up, maybe 3 or 4 additional, just makes you a little more proficient. But right now, where you have to have 25 now as a standard for the Ram Air program, takes a lot of time, and I just I would have some problems as far as managing that and managing the cost associated with it.
True, yeah. There's that, right? All of a sudden, training costs a lot more because more jumps, more fuel in the plane, more equipment. Because now you have a little computer you jump with, a little AD thing, the altimeter that cuts it. I think it's at 1,500 feet. It cuts your reserve loose if nothing happens. If your main doesn't come out. I hope I'm getting that right. And then when I was here, Charlie some of the folks here had cut like a sucker hole in the timber in like a sea of timber, and I think we did it in front of some national folks who came out to do the base inspection to show them the capabilities, and kind of seeing trying to prove that the round was still had its place, and especially in a spot like that. And man, that was a sporty jump for me being a rookie, but it was fun, and all of us hit the spot, which was pretty lucky. And I mean, you get close, and some people you can bag a tree from time to time, but we all got in there, and it was kind of cool, and kind of showing the capabilities of the round. But yeah, I think folks are just leaning towards the RAM with all the technology stuff, and then getting what used to be called MTDC, now it's called like NTDP involved, and hopefully getting to help with the technology that way. But yeah, it's tough because some of the jump spots, like you said, are bigger, and when I was jumping at the RAM, at least it was, and I only went through training. I didn't actually jump it full time because I only got 19 jumps, and I didn't make it fully through training. So, but you'd have to have a lane, and you went through the training, so you know all that stuff, right? So, like you had to have a lane to get into your jump spot is kind of part of it. But So I'm kind of torn, I guess. But I guess I can kind of see both sides. But
Mm.
doing rookie training, it definitely freaked me out. All the stuff that could happen to you,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and then one of their few folks, I want to say at least one for sure. Well, a few folks piled in my rookie year, and one was a fatality, and another one was a double femur, and like just stuff that on the ram air, that wasn't happening on the round. So
Mm.
my rookie year, I was like, oh, I don't know about that one, But then the Russian stuff, like, how did that come to be? What, like, it was an
Oh,
exchange program, right?
well, as part of the U.S.-Soviet Technical Exchange Program established by actually then President Nixon in the early 70s, and in 1975, I think it was, the Secretary of Agriculture and some Forest Service. I think it was one of the people in fire and somebody from one of the universities in forestry went to the Soviet Union, and while they're in the Soviet Union, they had a demo jump with the Russian parachute. And at the same time, we were looking for a new chute, one with a little more capability in terms of wind and also just performance. And so they recommended that they send a smoke jumper expert over the following year and spend a month in the Soviet Union with the Russian jumpers and looking at their parachute and some of their procedures. And I was base manager at that time, so I was the one selected along with ex-jumper who was in the Washington office fire management, Doug Bird, and then an interpreter. And then so we went over in September of 1976, spent a month, went to their national center, watched a lot of demos, and went to East Siberia.
Oh, wow.
So I got into East Siberia. I went through training, and then we ended up making 2 jumps with the Russian jumpers out of an old AN-2.
And
First jumper, which was a bi-wing, kind of a single engine, real classic
Really?
aircraft, which is one of their primary aircraft. I think it still is because they usually at the smaller bases, and very, very, very safe, very good jump aircraft.
Yeah.
And so we went to a small base in East Siberia, north of Lake Baikal, and they brought in about 10 or 12 of their overhead, their trainers and squad leaders and so on. And so we made 2 jumps. The first one was with all American equipment, so I jumped then at that time was the FS-10, and in all my jumps, all American jumps equipment, except for the boots. My boots were actually my whites, but
Oh, yeah.
so I made 1 jump there, and that was very successful. And then the following day, made another jump with the Russian parachute, which was then the Forester parachute, which was a 32-foot round, with 3 porosities of material and a different cut for as far as the steering and it also had a drogue chute. So we just did hooked to the overhead. It fell 4 feet, and the drogue then deployed the static line deployed the drogue, and you fell under the drogue 4.5 seconds. Then you did a ripcord pull.
Oh.
So it was basically a round, very similar to procedures of the ram air.
Yeah.
And so that went well. And so what I did, we gave them all of the American equipment, and in hopes that they'd give us all of the Soviet equipment.
Yeah.
And they said yes, they would do that, but they would have to come the following year, 1977, and visit us in the U.S. Then at that time, they would give us the equipment.
Oh.
So they did. The following year, we brought in a Forest Service DC-3 and one of the jumpers, the head of the aerial fire program in the Soviet Union, Nikolai Andreev. He brought him here to the base, and we went through training. Then we went up, and our crew here, the 12 of us, went up and made a jump, and I jumped with Andreev. And then after we got on the ground and formalities, then they presented us with the Russian Forester parachute,
Oh.
at which time I sent the drogue chute to the BLM, which is basically the drogue that they still use
Oh.
to deploy the ram air, sent the round canopy with the multi-porosity materials and cuts and everything to Missoula, and then from that they developed the Forest Service FS-12 parachute.
Oh, wow.
So we got a lot out of that.
Yeah.
Their jumpsuits and a lot of that was very inferior to ours. Ours is far more protective, but anyway, the parachute was and system was the big takeaway from that whole program.
Yeah. Were those Russians just tougher, so they didn't need as much padding?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw one of those Russian suits in McCall. They had it on display. Is that the same one, I guess?
Well, I sent it is at Missoula there for quite a while on their PR program where they had on display, and I don't know if it went from there. The following couple of years after that, of course, they had some Russians come over, and I think they joined the McCall crew for part of a season. So it's probably some of the equipment left from that exchange program that they had with the Soviet Union, or later on, of course, in 1990. By 1991, the Soviet Union was dissolved and it became Russia. So
Yeah. Oh, wow. Man, yeah, there's a lot more to it. 'Cause I didn't really know. I knew there had to be some kind of like diplomacy kind of going on and some exchange, but I didn't really know exactly how it was going.
Mhm.
And it sounded like it was more. The first person who told me, it sounded like it was more consistent, but it sounds like it was more like a short term kind of deal or exchange the like notes and equipment and then kind of went separate ways. And what was the reason why it stopped? Just because you got enough information out of each other?
I don't know. We got a lot of information in exchange. So I don't know what happened. No doubt it was political.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so later on, that got reestablished, and I know they sent Dan Schulman and a couple others over a few years later. It might have even been the early 90s. I think it was probably in the early 90s. And
Oh, wow.
kind of got the program reestablished, and this led to, I think, the exchanges.
Oh,
And then there's a jumper from Missoula and Alaska, Bruce Ford, who spoke Russian, and I think he was very instrumental having that linguistic connection
yeah.
as well as the technical abilities and so on that kind of helped establish the program. And
Oh, nice. And then the jumpsuit I saw was red. Was that the ones that were they typically red jumpsuits?
no, they just had a couple during the 1939, and that's one of Lufkin who ended up with a red jumpsuit. And,
Oh, really?
and when in 1998 we did a 60-year documentary on the Smokejumper program, and I jumped that same Lufkin's red jumpsuit
Really?
for that documentary and made a couple of jumps out of the Ford Trimotor.
Oh, really?
And,
Wow.
and
Where'd that suit end up? Is it in the museum somewhere? Or?
I don't know if that made it to. We tried to establish a Smokejumper museum or program, and through Eastern Washington University,
Oh,
trying to do collect a lot of the documents and equipment and so on for posterity, kind of an archive. And I don't know if the jumpsuit ended up there, or we
Yeah.
also were doing a lot of work with the University of Montana,
oh, very cool.
and so it might have ended up one or the other.
Yeah, I heard that some things kind of got moved around when when they were trying to absorb NCSB into Redmond. So some of the stuff, they weren't like if it ended up in Missoula or where some of the more historic stuff might have went to.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? I guess I don't know.
Well, we were concerned about where it might end up, and I think we sent some documents to, I think it was the University of Montana, into their archive system, and
Oh, gotcha.
yeah.
But the Russian suit I saw was red though. Were the Russian suits, Soviet Union suits, were they?
No, they were just standard khaki,
Huh.
as far as the ones that I saw when
Maybe it was a special one they got in McCall.
yeah.
Or maybe I'm remembering wrong.
Well,
Was it-
that might have been when they reinstituted the exchange and they had the actual jumpers from Russia come in. Well, they could have, but
Oh, yeah. What were their parachutes white then too, or? Do you
The
remember?
Russian shoots?
Yeah, Russian parachutes.
No, they were very colorful.
No, really?
Yeah, I think they had the yellows and the light blues, and I think they had some reds, but they were kind of a mixed color.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Man,
at
yeah,
least the one I jumped, as well as the ones I observed in the day before in the jumps.
yeah, having the color really helps it stand out. You see it in the Ram Air program, and even the FS14s were all blue, except for if you had the FS14 Plus that had the
Mm-hmm.
different kind of material. They were like gold. Did you ever see those ones?
No.
I think they're like yellow and blue or golden blue, and they were like made of different kind of nylon-ish material, supposed to have a little more forward drive and a little more performance. I never got to jump one, and they didn't really. I don't think too many bases even had too many of them.
Yeah, they probably change the porosity of the material, which would make a lot of difference. And
Yeah, I think so. It was kind of, and I think I had questions about the durability because even if you held it, it felt softer, like maybe a little more fragile. But I didn't know anything about parachutes when I was messing with it, so like I was just starting to learn how to sew at that point. So I was kind of keep my head down and doing that. What aircraft were here when you first started jumping? Was it a Ford tri-motor?
No, actually, it was a Norseman Nordine. Is one that was used actually in World War II. It was a single engine, 4 jumpers, jumped out of the right side instead of the left side.
Oh wow!
That was a standard here, as well as a Cave Junction base, and kind of to supplement that when they got busy, we're using twin beaches.
Oh yeah,
There are different models of twin beaches, but so those my first jump was out of a Norseman Nordine, and then I think the others were primarily twin beaches. They got rid of the Norseman Nordines the following year, '58. So we're primarily twin beaches here, although at Missoula in the 50s and so on, they were using Travel Airs and DC-3s, and they still had some Ford tri-motors.
Really?
And I think the tri-motor went into the mid-60s before they phased the tri-motors out.
Oh wow, that's a long run.
Yeah, a long run. I think the last one that was in here was in 1956. Apparently they brought a booster crew in from Missoula and jumped it here in '56. So that was one thing I always wanted to and hadn't jumped a tri-motor. But then when we did the 60-year documentary, we had the Evergreen Aviation had the tri-motor with one of the ex-Missoula Smokejumper pilots. And so I got my 2 jumps in Lufkin's red suit out of a Ford tri-motor. Yeah.
Man, is there any pictures of you with the red suit on, standing next to it?
Yeah, I've got some at home.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, in fact, we had a good picture of in that jump. There were 2 NCSB, myself and Steve Reno, who was one of my foremen here before I retired. He and I jumped Forest Service. I jumped actually jumped the 12, and we had a couple of BLM jumpers that jumped the Ram Airs.
Oh, wow.
And it was a lot of politics involved in that, but anyway, we have a good picture of us, the 5 of us, in front of the Ford tri-motor.
Very
that
cool.
day. Yeah. So.
Man, that is awesome. Yeah, if you remember when you go home, you have to send me a photo with you next to that Ford tri-motor. I'd love to have a copy of that.
Yeah.
That is very cool. Not only the red suit, but the tri-motor. Like, I've never even been around a tri-motor. Like,
you get Firefighters from the Sky, that 60-year documentary. Well, that was the opening scene is kind of supposedly a sunrise silhouette getting into the tri-motor. Then the first set of pictures would be exits from the tri-motor.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. What was it called?
Air to air. I think it's Firefighters from the Sky. You can get it if you go through the Smokejumper Association store. They have it on. I can't remember, $10 or whatever it is, but it's anyway. It's a 2-hour documentary on the history of the Smokejumper program.
Oh, very cool. I'll have to pick it up just to because I'm a little bit of a history buff. I mean, that's like, I'm in a 65 Airstream right now, and talking to you and picking your brain on the history of it. It's It's important to know, kind of where all this came from, and just hear about all the different technology and kind of where it's at right now and where it's come from. I mean, Francis Lufkin, that guy, when he told me on the phone, that blew my mind. I was like, holy cow! I mean, how long was he a base manager then?
33. Well, he was in the program 33 years because,
Oh
of course, he
God.
kind of assumed the leadership. Well, he was kind of the lead jumper in 1940, and then he would go through training every year. They usually have to go to Missoula and get trained, come back, and then if they got a fire activity here, they'd bring an airplane over and they jump the fire and so on. Then in 45, it was established as a regular, reinstated as a, or actually became a standard base, and then so he was technically the base manager from 45 until 72 when he retired.
Wow, that's a
But
long
he was
run.
also kind of during the 1940 to 44, he was the lead guy they'd go to. He'd do the maintain the parachutes and do they could do cargo drops or do fire jumps if as necessary.
Oh wow, yeah, it's some kind of jack of all trades
Mm-hmm.
back then. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, kind of sounds like a base manager role,
Mm-hmm.
Man, that is so cool. And then 72 is when you took over from him, huh?
Right.
And
Yeah.
he retired then. And
Yeah. He retired. Kind of his. I was kind of at that time the training foreman,
oh yeah,
and so knowing that he was going to go out and actually in May, I presented a challenge to him. He hadn't all my history here. He had never spotted. He had never jumped. He was the base manager, but he was not active in as far as a jumper or a spotter.
oh yeah.
So I gave him a challenge that his last official act was to take the five of us squad leaders overhead uh, up and drop us up on the hill from kind of whatever he felt the standard jump height. So
Yeah.
he got on a plane and he performed admirably. He took us up to, I think we were 5,000 AGL, something like that. And
Yeah.
he spotted us perfectly, and we had a picture taken and signed off as his last official act.
Oh, that is
So,
so cool.
yeah.
What a great way to send. What a good send off. What a great way to end it.
Mhm.
Man. And then, so you started in 72, and then,
As base manager 72, then
yeah,
I went through, retired in December 89.
that's a long run as well. And
Mm-hmm.
who'd you hand it over to then?
It was Doug Houston.
Oh, Houston. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, Doug was, he started in Redmond, and he was up here. He was a squad leader at NCSB. He went back to Redmond, and then after I retired, well, then he applied and became the third base manager. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was in 89, you said? Was that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think he was formally accepted in 90. So early 90, he took charge.
It's amazing to only have two base managers in that long a period of time. Well, I remember, the little booklet that they give you to study when you first get here as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing that. I was like, there's only been a handful of base managers. Darren Belsby was the manager, then base manager then, and he took over from Button, and then Button took over from Houston then, right? Or was there someone in
No,
between?
there's Steve. There's Steve's last name. But there was one other base manager after
Oh, I think I met him
after
too.
Doug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dang, I'm blanking on his name as well. Apologies, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought that was very cool to see such a long period, but like so few base managers, because it shows you kind of like that people are investing in the program. It seems like but and I don't know, that kind of seems how it goes. But I don't know anymore though. It seems like it's kind of tougher because it takes a little longer to get to the base manager maybe now, and then you kind of end more towards your retirement days. I feel like maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I think I was there. I can't remember 12 years or whatever it was. No longer than that before I took over from Francis. So
Yeah. Oh, that is cool. And then what had changed? Was the Quonset hut dorms still? Were they here the whole time you were here, or was that addition later on?
oh yeah, that was here. In fact, they had just over the winter of 56, 57, they had closed off the room. At one time, that was all open. So
Oh.
the actually the the west end of the bunkhouse they divided into four rooms. My first year, 57, the whole east end of the bunkhouse was all open.
Oh,
We
really?
just had old little metal frame beds in there, And then by the following year, we came back in '58. The rooms had been partitioned off into 4 rooms, and so you could accommodate up to 32 jumpers
Oh, wow.
in the building by '58.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Like, I lived there and I didn't even realize that it would hold that many. That's, I was in the little sweat box on this side, the west side, of the Quonset out there at the very end by the door.
Yeah, we had a swamp cooler, but it wasn't all that efficient.
Yeah, as a kid, I'd see him on people's house always, and you'd hear him humming away. I always thought they were pretty good until I actually got some experience with one, and they're not really that great.
Yeah.
They don't cool down like you'd like. Oh man, that is incredible. Let me check my list here real quick before I
Okay.
let you go, Bill, because man, I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much. I'm honored to have you on. Yeah, I think that's about all I got. I mean, went through about everything. 75th anniversary for Man Gulch is coming up. Did you? I'm trying to think. I mean, it was like 8 years before you came to the jumper world, so I don't think you'd. Would you have had any interaction with any of those guys, like Wag Dodge or?
No,
Yeah.
but that was '49. I started '57.
Yeah.
For the 50th year, I went over. They had a big ceremony and went over and hiked into the
Oh, really?
Man Gulch, and happened to meet one of the Bob Sully. He and his niece had hiked up to the where the tragedies were.
Holy cow!
And so I met them up on the ridge and sat there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just talking with Bob, and he was pointing out and the events and where different things occurred, and so it was very, very memorable. But
holy cow, that's wild. And man, that'd be a great moment. I mean, for an unfortunate tragedy, but like amazing to be able to sit down with the survivor and run you through it with you. You know, like it. I didn't realize it, but he lived in Three Forks, and he just recently passed away a few years back.
Right.
And I'm from Whitehall, and and they're right next to each other.
Uh-huh.
You know, like I don't know, 20 minutes from my house from my folks' house to Three Forks. I had no idea. And then I remember it's like my second year, I think, in smoke jumping. Just saw it in the paper, that he had passed away, and I had no idea. I was like, dang, I would love to just pick his brain. And that's like you'd asked me before we started recording, and moments like that were like, man, I wish I got to sit to like a chance like you got to go sit on the hill with him, or even just sit in his living room or whatever, or in the Airstream like this. And so that was little things like that, I think, before I kind of recognized it, were spurring me towards this podcast. It was like, man, there's a lot of good people out there that are passing away that have stories that I'd love to help share. Like something like that. I mean,
yeah, that was what was interesting with Lufkin, just
yeah,
sitting down and just talking about the old days, and he'd talk about his trapping days and logging days and playing baseball, and it was just so interesting, just being one-on-one with somebody like that.
Yeah, from a different era, like I wrote a book not too long ago, and I'm blanking on the name of it right now. Oh, it was Tarzan the Mountain Man. I was about to look out in the Subway Bitterroot, and kind of same story, like firefighter in the summer, trapper in the winter, and man, just a tougher world to live in. He'd built all these little cabins so that when a blizzard would pop up, he had some shelter to go to. And I mean, he got snowed into one of his cabins for 7 days, but he had enough supplies. He was smart enough to stretch them out. He wasn't like eating big meals, but he was able to stretch it out over time. But like, I imagine like talking to Francis Lufkin, he kind of coming from a different world. Probably wasn't much here when he first got here, probably, huh?
Much what?
Much here, like as in like people in the Met House at that point.
Well, I think it was just the old towns of Twistman, Winthrop, and everybody just a lot of logging and trapping this, and that was before the highway came in, so it was pretty much isolated during parts of particularly the winter months.
Yeah, jeez, yeah, different. Yeah, I think a lot more of that like isolation, especially in the winter months in the Northwest, everywhere, Montana, Washington, where you had kind of like your tight knit group who stayed around all year round, and some other folks who maybe were seasonal workers who would come back in the spring, and that's some of the older books I've read about, firefighting were kind of that way, where folks would come, especially like rural Idaho, they'd show up for their season and then head back to wherever they came from, back east or wherever it might be. And then just some of the overhead were hanging out, taking care of the place during the winter. And, turning a ghost town pretty much, 'cause no logging was probably going on in the winter really, huh?
There were, they tried to, I think, the more accessible timber, but definitely slowed down. And so
man, that'd be so cool, because it's probably like mornings where you're just having some coffee with Francis and just picking his brain on how it all began, with like you said earlier, the Eagle Parachute Company. And because there wasn't really much going on. There was only company really around right at the time, wasn't it? Eagle Parachute Company.
Irvin was another one. 'Cause I know a lot of the chutes when I started. I think there were two. Might have been I think there was a third company I know of where the Forest Service purchased some of the FS 2s and 5As parachutes from. But the Eagle was just lasted a couple of years, and can't remember the other two companies right now. But
gotcha. And then the military started manufacturing their own, and then that's
they had,
like you said earlier.
They contracted out in large numbers. And
gotcha. And then I meant to ask you earlier too when we were talking about, but then something else came up. But when we were talking about the opening shock, of the older parachutes before the D-bag, so that they would split out the lines first instead of opening the canopy first. So for folks listening, like back, what me and Bill are talking about, back in the day, the canopy would open first, and then all the lines that the jumper is attached to or parachutes attached to would split out, but like really fast. So it is like your parachute was kind of stopped, like. The planes going close to 100 miles an hour, some of them, right?
Try to keep it close to 85 to 100, depending on the aircraft and so on.
Yeah. So you got this big parachutes, like I said, some were 32 feet, 28 feet in diameter, going to full opening, and then throwing the jumper pretty much out, right? And then stopping when the lines are splayed all the way out, right? And then that's when you have that hard opening shock.
You could, if you got bad position, you could easily scrape all the skin off of your clavicles, and I've even I was dropping a jumper, I think it was in 61, down in the Blue Mountains, and he got bad position and knocked out, and he was knocked out all the way to the ground. He didn't wake up until it was just before he was ready to land. He kind of came to, but he was probably a quarter mile from the other jumper who was in the jump spot. But you could even hear from the base on a quiet morning. You could hear the opening, the little clap when they're jumping up a Bear Creek.
Oh wow!
And it's even more so when they were jumping. The Eagle parachute had a much worse opening shock.
Really?
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah, I heard some stories when I was a rookie. Giving tours to folks who. Retired jumpers who would come in and talk and share some stories about that. And I knew about that after the opening shock being, pretty brutal, but then someone had told me that it had, knocked a few folks out, and I was like, holy cow, like that's pretty hard. So what the position you're talking about, kind of more of a tuck? Is that how you're keeping from getting knocked out, or?
Well, just trying to get a good vertical.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
just, and tight, and plus just a good vertical. But if you got off on a shoulder and a little bit of a roll, or you could get wrapped pretty bad. And it wasn't that uncommon for somebody to lose a helmet.
Oh, really? Just rip her out their head?
Yeah. If you didn't have it, if you had a loose helmet anyway from a haircut or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But more than once somebody lost a helmet on the opening shock.
Oh, jeez. Dang that. Man, I was always joking around that it's tougher humans than me, at least, back then. Holy cow! And then during that, I think it was 75th, the anniversary that I was just kind of showed up during it was going on, and I was on my R&R day, so I didn't really stick around. I was, had plans, but one of the other jumpers, retired jumpers, was teasing a current jumper about all the padding they had in their jumpsuit. And I thought that was pretty funny too. I'm like, you need all that padding, huh? And as I was just walking by, I was like, oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Padding's improved a lot.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Because back when you're jumping, and when you see the pictures, like when you jump Lufkin's red suit, it could have been too much padding in that sucker then, huh?
No, it wasn't too much. It's kind of a a wool matted felt, more of a felt, but it wasn't all that, not nearly as good as the current padding.
Yeah, we kind of look like marshmallows compared
Yeah.
to the old ones.
Yeah.
I was on a fire in Alaska, and we were supposed to jump this town and then try to do protection on the whole community, and go out and burn or help lay hose, whatever was needed. But we couldn't get a hold of anyone on the ground, so we ended up landing, and we were in a casa, just like the one here, and the tailgate, the back, hatch opens up, and all these Type 2 firefighters were there on the ground before us, so they didn't need us, but the communication was off, so dispatch had no idea what exactly they had for resources. But we landed anyway to tie in with them because we didn't have any communications with them. And so we come waddling out in our jumpsuits. And, as you can see, like the disappointment on these young kids' faces. That
Oh, yeah.
I'd never seen smoke jumpers before. And they see these little marshmallows come waddling out the back of a plane. And you got that strap between your legs. So you can barely walk, and they were just like, huh. They're like, yeah, that's the reality of it,
Right.
There's a bunch of marshmallows waddling around.
Yeah,
But-
particularly in those remote villages that hadn't seen or not familiar with jumpers. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and you kind of, the movies always, make it look a little better than what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's usually skydiving in the movies when they're showing smoke jumpers and make us look cooler, which is fine with me.
Yep.
Well, Bill, I think that's all I got, man. Unless there's
Okay.
anything else you'd like to share.
No, been a good life.
Yeah. Oh man, great. Yeah, and long fire career and knees. I mean, look like you're getting around well. Your knees are all in good shape.
Yeah,
and everything.
yeah, knees, everything.
Knees and
good.
back. Yeah. Old John Spencer. Did you ever meet him?
John?
Yeah, he was a teacher and jumper here for a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I knew John before he started jumping. When I was flying air attack, he was working on the Leavenworth district. So I worked with John as an air attack with a ground person, a firefighter, and then he became a jumper, and we worked together in the air attack program training. And
Oh,
yeah.
awesome. Man, yeah, great guy.
mm-hmm.
We since he was a teacher, he'd show up late, so he showed up my rookie year in 13, and was getting some Wi-Fi in the bunkhouse there, and it was just me and my rookie bro, Justin Johansson, and we were getting ready for a boost to Redmond at the time. Redmond had jumped out from a storm, but the Casa was sucked into Alaska, so we didn't have a plane at the time, so we were taking a van, and it was like me, Charlie, Johansson, and I'm trying to think who else was going with us, but there's just a handful of us that were heading down to Redmond in this green van. So not as glamorous as I hoped for my first boost, but we're getting our stuff ready, and John's hanging out with us, and I think it was me who was like, hey John, any advice? And he's like, he starts going into all his injuries, and I was like, oh man, it's like I shattered my ankles, broke my. I think like a tib fib or something. I can't remember what he did. Like hurt his back. He had like a couple things he was going into, and I was like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have asked."
Yeah.
But it's good to know because he really re-imprinted in my brain about getting on the lee side of the wind, and getting that down air and hammering in.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, because I ended up getting stuck. I don't know if it's that boost or the next one. I ended up getting stuck in some up air in California. And I think it was him who was telling me just ride it out, and because, where there's up air, there's down air. So he said just to try to stay in it and maybe find the edge of it. Just don't, start flying out of it, because then that's when you could catch that down air and get hammered in. So did you ever have any experience with that, with the down air and piling in?
Yeah, I did.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you obviously did a really good PLF because you're getting around pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it took a little recovery time, but I just hit some bad down air early morning in the shadows, all the descending air at early morning jump, and got slammed real hard.
Yeah, because of that cooling air right in the shadows.
So we had one jump. We back in the mid 80s north of the base here, and I got on the ground, and the next jumper hit a thermal, and I timed him. I think he's 21 minutes.
Holy.
And he traveled just almost a mile up to the north with the airflow, and then he got different airflow, got through it, and he came back down and landed within probably 100 yards of where the rest of us were, but he was up 21 minutes.
What a ride.
Yeah.
Man. I wonder how I felt after that. Because I know the harness, we did like a 10,000 AGL jump here for training, just to try to practice some riser turns and a few other things with parachute and collapse your parachute a little bit to get to feel the parachute a little more. And I want to say that I think around my groin from the harness was, like I was starting to cut off some flow to my feet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that wasn't that long, of a ride, maybe 5 minutes. I don't know if it was even that long, but so 20 minutes, I just feel like I wouldn't feel my feet by the time I went to the ground.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, that is. Well, thanks again, Bill. I appreciate you taking the time, and it was really great meeting you. The first time I ever got to talk to you was today, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and enjoyed, and wish you the best with your podcast.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And thanks, folks, for tuning in and listening.